Hello everybody, ladies and gentlemen, here in Madrid and online. I'm very happy to welcome you to this event, which we're basically co-organizing together with the Ministerio para la Transición Ecológica y el Reto Demográfico, ¿sí? IDAE, GENERA and Renewable, the Renewable Energy Pulse Network for the 21st Century. This event is our global launch of the Renewables 2022 Global Status Report. And it's actually the opportunity to speak about the global energy transition. Where do we stand? Where do we need to go? I'm very excited to basically have many important players and voices here participating in this event and look forward to a very fruitful discussion. So to start with, we will move to a first presentation basically of the Renewable President Arturo Servos, who will present us the key findings of the Renewable Renewables Global States Report 2022. Okay.
So, thank you, Ms. Vice-Presidenta, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here with you today and launch officially our report, the Global Status Report for 2022. But before going to that, just, if I try, okay, yes. Just two words about REN 21, for those that don't know REN 21. It's a global multi-stakeholder network for energy policy, and in reality is the only global community of renewable energy actors which englobes together science, academia, NGOs, governments, intergovernmental organizations, and industry. And it has a community which is about 3,000 members around the globe, which are contributing and cooperating in collecting information, changing norms, and debating. And we have a certain number of annual publications, which are considered as, I would say, the most comprehensive crowdsourced reports on renewables. The flagship of those publications is the Global Status Report, which comes out once per year around this time, and which we are launching today. So this is the 17th reality publication. We started in 2005 when REN 21 was created. And as you see, the report features all aspects of renewables, having a global overview, but policy, market, investments, special emphasis also on distributed renewable for energy access and on renewables in cities. So this, what it does, it gives the picture of what has happened last year in the world in renewable energies. Specifically this year, we have put a little bit more than last year, because what has happened at the beginning of this year with the invasion of Russia in Ukraine and the consequences that had in the energy sector, we had to have some elements that are included in the report, even if it was not 2021 but 2022. So let me then start really from the beginning, and we were expecting the 2021 as the promise of a green recovery. So we have passed the 2020, really through very difficult times globally, and we were expecting that 2021 will be really a very good year for the green recovery. And we had some very positive elements. I would say that we had an increase in net zero commitments in 2021, expressed especially in the COP26, where we saw many countries coming in with net zero commitments. And we had also the record additions in renewable power for another year. So we have more than 315 gigawatts installed globally. This is a big number. It's more than the German system, just to take the European bigger reference. And with an annual growth of 17%, which is really very important. And also the electricity demand also increased, and from renewables has grown by 6%. And also we had some other positive elements. Also, we had a record on investments also. But if you look the right hand of this graph, you see where the real problem is. And the real problem is that we are doing very well in the power sector, but we should do much more. What you have in the right part is really what we should be doing if we have to have net zero by 2050. So in reality, we should be in installations, we should be more or less triple the annual capacities that we are doing now if we were really to achieve what we are saying. So let's check a bit the energy system in general, again in 2021. So the bad news in reality is that the transition is not happening. If we look what has happened in 2021 with respect to 2020, we are in a standstill in terms of percentages. Although what you see here in this graph is the increase of renewables between 2009, I did it. It's always, technology. Okay. So in 2009, the increase of modern renewables between 2009 and 2019 is 3%, from 8.7 to 11.7. So in 10 years. So you can imagine that going in this rhythm, you will never arrive at what we're considering as our goals, especially in the climate discussions. 2020 is a very special year, as we all know, but it has a very interesting element, I would say, there. What has happened because of COVID, we have a decrease, for the first time we see such a decrease in general consumption. And what has shown us an increase, a considerable increase in renewables, from 11.7 to 12.6, which means, it shows in reality the big interplay that is between energy efficiency and renewables. So it's not just putting more renewables on the screen, we have to do the energy efficiency, and that's when we're going to see really the numbers increasing. So the other aspect, which is also very important, and which many times we ignore it or we don't give it the emphasis, is that the big story of renewables is happening in the power sector. That's where we see the big developments with wind and PV solar really in the forefront. But the power sector represents less than 20% of the total energy consumption. So we have a 20% and 28% in the power sector coming from renewables. Parenthesis, in 2021 didn't increase. although we had these record numbers, the number remained the same as in 2020. And this is because the consumption, the general consumption has increased more than the renewables in reality. So we had the 6% on the energy consumption increase. So the power, so we are doing very well in the power, it's increasing, although I'm saying, again, one has to really to see it in the context, 28%. But in the other sectors, which represent more than 80% of the total energy consumption, and I mean about heating and cooling and transport, then the percentages are really much smaller. In heating and cooling, you see there 11.2, and in transport, 3.7% comes from renewables. So if we want, you can, project a bit to the future. Even if we achieve 100% in the power sector, if we don't do the things in the other sectors, we will never arrive really at the numbers that we are talking in 2030, 2050, or whatever reference we have. I think this is a very important element that we have to put in the forefront. And if we see the energy scene and not the electricity, that's what I think what I'm trying to say is we have to look the energy. And if we look globally the energy, although we have seen increases in renewable energies, we have only 3 countries in reality that have a renewable energy share in total final energy consumption of over 50%, total energy, not electricity, I'm saying again, and which is Iceland, Finland, and Sweden. And for specific reasons, each one of them, but these are the only 3 countries. So there is a long way to go, I would say, there. I said also at the beginning that in 2021, we have really a net zero ambition that increased in 2021. We have 135 countries with net zero policies. But only 84 countries have both a net zero and economy-wide renewable energy target. And if we look which of the countries have in the long term 100% renewables, this is only the 18% of that even for 2050, they have, as a target, the 100% renewables. So what are we living really in the last, I would say, months or a year in reality, because it started in September last year that we have seen really the incredible increase in prices, especially of gas, of oil also, but especially of gas, is the collapse of the fossil fuel system that we are living. The fossil fuels, we all know that we have been discussing, the climate and environmental impacts, the health impacts, well, very well known. What we have seen, I think, during the year that passed very clearly are the economic impacts that we have. The high volatility, the windfall profits that we show for the fossil fuel players, the billions of people which are facing energy poverty from what is happening. And another very important element that came in the forefront, especially in Europe, I would say, is the energy security and the role that really the renewables can play, as it was called by certain politicians as the freedom energy in reality, because it gives us the freedom that we don't depend, the freedom of independence in reality with respect. Depending on the country, all of our European countries have a big dependence on Russian gas and mainly gas, but also oil, but mainly gas. Some of the countries very big, and we have really difficulties in facing this. So, but besides all this, at the end of the day, if we see the subsidization of fossil fuels, I have the number here that says $11 million per minute. Globally, we subsidize the fossil fuels. So we are in the renewable energy era. The question is how fast are we going to go, and if we are on time in order not to see big really changes in the catastrophic way happening in globally if we are not doing what we have to do. So I'm not going into the details, of course. We have a diversity of benefits which are not only in the energy sector, which are global, the whole economy, the whole society that are coming from renewables. What has happened the last 10 years is really the energy cost that has fallen tremendously, especially in the solar PV, which was almost 90% from 2010 to 2021, but also on wind, which is 64% in the same period, and that really made renewables being the cheapest option in reality for electricity production today. And this is understood in several parts of the society. And I just have two examples here. One is the role of corporations, for example. So we have seen that what we call the corporate PPAs increasing really very importantly. We have a 31.1 gigawatts increase in 2021, which is a 24% increase with respect to 2020 on the corporates signing the PPA. So they see also, apart from the environmental, they see also economic benefit to do that. That's clear. And also the role of the cities, that we have more than 1,500 cities that have renewable energy target policy up from 1,300 in 2020. So 30% of the population, of the urban population, lives in cities which have renewable energy engagement. And that's, I think, it's extremely important for the future. So just to conclude, in reality, we are faced with a choice. And the choice is, where do we put our money? And this is referring to the governments, but also to society, not only the governments. I said at the beginning that we have had a record year. You see there, this is the investments, the annual investments. So we had $366 billion investments in renewables in 2021. If we take the different scenarios, we need from the triple to 5 times that in order to achieve the goals again that I was referring before. But even if we take the worst case scenario, which says 5 times that, which means that we need $1.9 trillion per year to invest, this is the 1/3 of the $5.9 trillion that were the subsidies, according to IMF, the subsidies to the fossil fuel industry in 2021. So this is our choice, and we have to make it. And I hope that Spain will be in the forefront of that choice, as it has shown up to now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arturos, for those enlightening results, I guess, and big messages also about the choices we have, governments and societies. And we will now move to the next part of this event. And I'm actually very excited that we know that Spain is one of the leading countries in an overall transition. And I'm very, very happy to have Vice President and Minister of the Ministry for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge from Spain with us, Mrs. Teresa Ribera. And I invite you to come to the floor while we have for the streaming a short video. See? We will hear hear now about the perspectives actually on the Renewables Global Status Report from the Spanish view and perspective.
Thank you so much, dear Rana. Thank you, dear Arturos. Luckily, Rana clarified something which was going to be my first message. We have homework to do that we've seen in the presentation. The fact that we have to be among the cities leading the revolution we are already in are part of our today's reality. We believe, we're actually convinced that because of all the reasons that we've seen on the presentation of the report, because of the environmental, social, energy, and economic elements, this revolution is essential, and we cannot miss on this opportunity. This report is incredibly interesting. It summarizes clearly some of the great ideas that are driving this transformation. It gives visibility to the concerns we have to pay attention to. We need to devote our time and energy to them. So I thank you all very much to those at REN 21, one of these pioneer initiatives who understood much earlier than the Sustainable Development Goals where the success lied in. Thank you. We are so honored to host this event, to host the launch of this report. We are deeply honored to celebrate the following phase of debate and acceleration soon in Madrid. This global status report, which is a traditional report now, representing the most important reference for stake players in the sector, has become a pillar for all of us. REN 21 is key for us to understand what we're talking about, and they are one of the essential actors. They make us publicly and visibly acknowledge their effort. The key conclusions of the report are striking, but I would like to underline 3 of them. It's okay. We drove a transformation in our energy system. We are more mature now in technologies and implementation of many measures. It's been made well known globally, but sadly, our speed is not the right one. Every year, it's more expensive. Effects are more severe every day. There are more tensions socially, and we are not making the most of the benefits of renewable energies. I would like to say that some of the statements on the report are striking. The first one, which Arturos introduced, is that it's true that in 2021, the figures are not a success. Climate emergency is still here. Recovery expectations are not as good yet. Investment prospects are good. However, the results shown are not up to scratch. And the consequences reinforce the main conclusions we came to in the past already. But there's still a challenge ahead because they make things more difficult and produce tensions which are unfair. not only in the context of the Russian invasion, but also beyond Europe in many other places in the world. Dependency in the field of energy has become a huge vulnerability for Europe, not just from the energy point of view, but also socially, with many implications. And we need to respond with a unified criterion so that we can speed up the energy transition process without forgetting the effects of the short-term response beyond our barriers and front borders. Among them, food security, but also access to energy, as Arthur said, because there are more and more people affected in their households. Also, beyond our borders in terms of poverty. So we have a very important role to play to try to balance out the imbalance. We strive for a more healthy correlation so that we can see improvements in big transitions, but also proximity solutions so that we can balance out in a healthier and more obvious way. We need to have a greater correlation between global and local fields. Since the year 2000, we say that the economic recovery should be green, and this is what we've done in Spain. We had to speed up what we had already diagnosed and set out as an agenda to reduce the imbalance in territories, personnel. So we need to support training formats and a different kind of industry, different kinds of cities, energy models that are different, and engagement to what a great part of society demands. In the recovery plan, we included this green approach, merging intelligence with the digital revolution, with these key elements so that we can be successful, which are implications from the social field. We have to reduce the differences between rural areas and urban areas, striving for equal opportunities and insisting on the need that this agenda is for women. Women should not be left behind in an energy world where men hold the highest ranking positions still. Our recovery plan is aligned with a very powerful message. It is imperative that we decentralize our new energy system. We're working towards this. We are applying a digitalization, decarbonized, democratized, and decentralized system. Our regulatory effort and recovery effort has been doubled, and we know that the demand and the absorption capacity is huge. There are over 100,000 businesses and households in the country, who have driven solutions and initiatives for small plants, self-consumption, etc. We have increased the budget so that we can put this revolution further forward. Administration bodies at different levels have participated, and the budget is over 500 million euros. This has allowed us to speed up, which is a 75% increase on the initial budget. Same goes for mobility. We have new mobility models which are different. They affect territory, the design of our cities and metropolitan areas, the industrial chain, the right equipment, infrastructure, services, etc. But also to the classic industry, which should be part of the solution. They cannot be left standing alone with the past approaches. We think that Spain is in a very interesting position. We've been working to accelerate the energy transition for a long time, and we are grateful that this has been recognized on the Global Status Report. Spain is there, which allows us to keep on the right track, to work on those elements that we stand out already, such as solar and wind power. And we need to continue this way together with the remaining measures that we need to apply and implement. We are facing challenges which are full of opportunities for the industry, innovation, and employment. What about storage? What about a better performance in the use of infrastructure when they are digitalized? How about technologies performance with the new materials that should be replacing more complex ones? There are so many things that mean new challenges and opportunities. Spain in 2021 broke a new record in photovoltaic installations with 4.9 gigawatts of solar capacity added in 2021, which is 44% more than in 2020. Total capacity is 18.5 gigawatts, which means annual growth of 36.7%. Spain alone accounted for 3% of global solar PV addition in 2021. And this year, so far, we are on the track of improving this figure. We still remain the global leader for cumulative concentrated solar thermal power capacity in operation. It had the highest share after Australia in solar photovoltaic power, and we are the second country in Europe for total wind power capacity, 28.2 gigawatts just after Germany. These are the results of a decision we took as a country. Spaniards should feel proud. Walking around GENERA today has showed me how we are working in a vibrant atmosphere. Young people are immersed in careers full of passion. We need a legal framework that goes along with these ideas, because there are other collectives and industries for which transformation is also a challenge compared to their current decision. We need a framework full of references. We want to share which are the important goals for us, which are the propositions of the pathways that allow us to achieve them. So working on spotting objectives and roadmaps have been an incredibly useful tool. We have been sharing and promoting a dialogue, a varied one full of different stakeholders, and to learn how to do it better.
So we know that Spain appears in this report as an important country on installed power grid, on seventh place on per capita energy, and on 19th position for final consumption energy. But we still have a lot to work on until we can meet the engagements on decarbonization of the power system. But we are thrilled to continue, even in very complex situations as the one we are living right now. But we do not need to forget that in order to carry on, we need absolutely for the people to feel the benefits of this new path. It is vital for all the stakeholders traditional ones, they need to be aware that this transformation need also their effort in investment and in generosity, not only recovering the benefits that will arrive, but also of facilitating the transition in the name of all. So in parallel of this structural framework energy, the situation of the political and social context is forcing us on acting on this field. We are living in a very difficult situation, and it's not only gas that has increased its price, but also electricity, depriving the people from resources that should need to be used to facilitate the system to go together with the new system. And it is vital, therefore, to work from the administration, from the government, to make this balance happen and to keep it from disappearing in this very difficult years in this crisis. It is a very important moment to open a debate on how to use a very useful solution that need to be updated and also adapted to a new situation, much more sophisticated, and with a huge need on social support. For us, from our side, we know which are the politics and the decisions that we need to make, but those are shared engagements with other members of the European Union. Our society already knows, and we know also that the regional scale cooperation between regions, between Europe and its neighbors, between Europe and other nations far away, but in which this increasing demand on a solution is key. Therefore, we need to put an end to the dependency on fossil fuels, and today we have further reasons to do so, and to do it faster and better, to do it with a path that allows us to implement new solutions. But unfortunately, we are living a moment in which we are living the tension of this new path, and the circumstances are forcing us to. And instead, we are lacking some speed to do it. And that is the path that we need to work on the first place. We need to improve and to fasten the implementation of renewable energies. And in order to achieve minus 50% of greenhouse gas emissions, forces us to think about where are the margins that we have and where can we work on. It represents which elements among the different factors are key to be successful and on which should we put our focus. Some of the solutions make it from a democratic point of view. This is a relationship and a revolution for which we all have a role to play. Europe is thinking about this initiative for PV on roofs of new public and commercial and residential buildings is imperative. And we should have done that a long time ago, because it is a strategy coming from the European Union specifically to increase our PV output, installing more than 300 gigawatts from until 2030. Also, a new opportunity to develop new jobs for the benefit, of course, of the citizens and the consumers, and also for the industrial network and emerging services, seeing things from a new point of view, doubling the path of boilings, and changing also in modern and making the heating systems on our buildings more modern. This is also vital to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels and to achieve this independence, in order also to take the most of the integration of the system. And from the European Commission, we have had a suggestion, and it is also an invitation to reflect and to think about how knowing that environment protection, social support, integration of solutions is the key and is the balance that we need. And precisely, this leadership is what we think has allowed us being among the first positions of the list. We are extremely humbled, but also honored to host this new international fair for renewable energies in 2023. We think that it's something to be extremely grateful about. Also for the generosity of REN 21, since they are inviting us to host it again next year. And the last editions have been held in Korea, in Mexico, and South Africa. So it is an event that changes continent every 2 years, gathering more than 3,000 participants among 30 panels and having already 165 panelists from many different countries. Europe is a very interesting country, area in the world regarding renewable energies, and we have many different solutions and approaches. That is why we are honored to represent Europe in this fair being held in 2023. We're calling it SPIREC, an opportunity to consolidate our position as an international point of reference to within new paths and relations with new institutions and sectors, and with REN 21, of course. It will be held between 21st and 23rd of February next year. And GENERA is being held on the same dates to the 75th anniversary. After 25 editions, GENERA is a reference for the sector, and I want to thank all of you, of course, our visitors, the panelists, exhibitors, and also to all the industry on the sector. They have walked through the desert, and they are even stronger than before. But of the most interesting bets for our young professionals. For 3 days, here at GENERA IFEMA, we have several stakeholders from all over the world in the context of SPIREC. We proved after COP25 here in this very same venue. I could never thank enough all the team of IFEMA, all the work that they've done to make Madrid one of the most important references in the world. And we will be happy to host our guests once again, and to be committed and engaged with our energy and power systems, also with our obligations now and for the future, for those engagements and those goals that we need to meet in 2030 and 2050 to open its path, and its speed might be increased. And before passing the floor, I would like to remind you again of the great opportunity that we have with this transformation. And also, I want to say that I'm extremely grateful to all the communities that in a very active and persistent way are giving the best of themselves to day by day keep being better, keep improving, even though there are a lot of obstacles along the way. Nowadays, we have a very important strategic framework. Of course, we can improve it. We can always improve things. But we know that we're more right than ever, that we have the resources that we need, and we also know that we have the combination of different alliances that we need in order to face these challenges. I think that we can face those challenges. We only need to increase the speed, to multiply it by 3 or maybe 5 times. Why not? Thank you very much.
Thank Thank you very much to the Vice Minister and Vice President and Minister Teresa Ribera. We now have the possibility for a short Q&A session, so from the floor. We'll have a very quick streaming, and I'll ask Teresa and Arturus to quickly join me here on the panel. Here we go in the next part of the session. So we have the Minister Teresa Ribera with us and the Renewable President Arturus Servos. You heard their statements. I think I really like what you said, Teresa, about the fact that global means local and local means global. So the transitions we're talking about are fundamental. And we're very excited from Renewable side to really have this Spanish leadership, but also the opportunity to share basically your experiences here with the global players and inspire and do this around the Spanish International Renewable Energy Conference. Now you have the possibility to ask our dear speakers here, ask them a question, in particular obviously around the status report and the data you find here, but also developments basically of the number statistics in Spain. Is there anybody who has a question? We have one question here. I would like to ask you, just being mindful of time, if you could quickly introduce yourself and keep your question short, this would be very nice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Arturo Perez. I'm General Manager of IDAE, which is the e-mobility cluster in Spain. My question goes to the Ministry, Mr. Rivera. You said that we need to increase the speed up to 5 times for going to the energy transition. So how can we do that? With the collaboration of the public and private sectors from the administration, can we get it easily, or what are the tools we need to do that so rapidly? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think that we need to work together. And I was talking about alliances before from the institutions and the public administration. It is obvious that we need to set this framework from technology approach, investors, and to work on an easy deployment. From an institutional point of view, we think that stakeholders are vital, and I will add 2 other elements. First of all, the people, I mean, on a lower scale, since we need for people to, not to be activists, but to be informed, for them to be aware of the situation and to be aware also of the benefits of the transition, mainly now in this crisis that we are living. A third element that I think is also very important, and one of the bottlenecks that we need to pay attention to, is the following. For the society and the system to be able to digest or to adapt itself to this fast transition, is to be able to have skilled workers. From the point of view of design and strategic analysis, also maintenance, operations, deployment and implementation, and we need to think about the change of full cities. We need experts in robotics, also financial services that it need to be designed on a very different way compared to the traditional one, and it is one of the main elements explaining why it is so difficult to improve and to boost the base. From environment, economic or social point of view, we have many benefits, and those are obvious, but we do not have the base that we need, maybe because we are lacking some consolidation of the social capacity of absorption.
I have another question. I think we have time for one other question. I think we have a gentleman over there.
Thank you very much. So I'm Daniel del Barrio. I'm assistant professor from University of Tokyo.
We cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry. I'm Daniel del Barrio. I'm assistant professor from University of Tokyo. And I actually have maybe one question for each of you. Maybe for the Vice Minister, you mentioned about the democratization, and now you mentioned also to have the informed actors. If you could elaborate a bit on some of the areas that you are focusing to promote that or to realize that democratization. And for the President of REN 21, you talk about the role of the cities, and I agree it's quite interesting, but I was wondering if you are also looking to the rural areas and how the towns in more rural settings can contribute, or what role they could have. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, why don't you start?
Sí, no estoy segura.
I'm not quite sure that I understood the full question because the sound wasn't very good, but regarding the democratization that you just mentioned, I can elaborate on it a little bit. So we know that the traditional way of the 19th and 20th century to produce energy was dependent on technology, of course, and a high need of investments, therefore, a lot of resources, and restricted to very few stakeholders. We don't know that it's not the case anymore, and we need to be adapted or introduced into a wider environment and very different stakeholders. And it is a challenge, indeed, from the technical, network and data point of view, also from the point of view of stakeholders and regulation. But nevertheless, I think it is of extreme importance because we have no other choice. We need to work in this sense, in this direction. Some of the elements that are still on the table, which are key, of course, and which can inspire us, well, how the digital revolution was deployed for the first time. If we applied the same premises of the electrical revolution, the digital revolution might have never happened. Therefore, the deployment of infrastructures and cable on a linear way, sometimes not using maybe the best of approaches, but always safe. Without all of this, we would have never had the digital revolution. So we can be inspired by it. We can take it well, as an inspiration to this new challenge. It is a huge challenge, nevertheless, and we need a higher intelligence from all the stakeholders. And we are at this point now. We have scalability in these solutions, so they are modern and we can implement them in small communities. But this complexity of this system with a high demanding system that we have in many of the countries in our environment, we need to understand that we cannot take short paths. And in order to do it properly, we need to take advantage of all the knowledge out there and to organize it in a proper way.
Sure. So I think building also on the question of democratization. So what about the rural areas and the integration of the regions and urban, regional, rural tensions in industrialized countries, but also in developing countries?
I think for the development of regions, I think it's one of the most important factors is the development in rural areas in reality, because by definition the renewables are distributed and decentralized. So the role of the rural areas is critical. So also it's different in industrialized countries and in developing countries, of course. But in both, the role is extremely important. I think the democratization we're talking in the first part for the industrialized countries, of course, for the developing countries also is important. But for the developing countries, where especially if we're talking about Africa, you know, and then the role becomes really capital in all that. And it's another way of looking the whole system. That's the whole difference. We are coming from a centralized system to a decentralized system. I think that especially for the developing countries, they have a chance to not do the mistakes that we did as industrialized countries in the big centralization, you know, the central stations that we're doing everything from there, etc. So they have really the possibility to pass to the next step without doing the step that we did. But it's difficult really to pass, but I think it's extremely important. If really we succeed in doing that, I think we have made a big step towards what we were discussing just before.
Thank you so much to both of you. Thanks for the questions from the public. We now, for timing reasons, I know there are more questions, so please stay in touch. Join us in February, I think, for Spirec to continue the discussion. We will now move to the next part because Renewable is about multi-stakeholder dialogue. And if we speak about democratization, it's a diversity of perspectives. We heard like public-private partnership. So please stay here. We have a short video and a new setup. Come in the middle of us. So we're now leading into a discussion to bring other perspectives into the discussion, because the reality is when we speak about the energy transition, it is not only a technological transition, it's also about the economy, it's about the society. And the reality is we have many, many market players and societal players around the table who play a role. So I'm actually very excited to have two key sectors represented here, or our types of players. Obviously a third one, I'll come to you directly, John. To start with Julia Lopez Ventura, who is the European Regional Director from C40, which is a city network. And we have clearly heard that cities play a big role, so I'm very much looking forward to what you'll have to say. Arturo Perez de Lucia, who is the Director General from IDAE, and now I'm going to try and train my Spanish, which is Asociación Empresarial para el Desarrollo y Impulso de la Movilidad Eléctrica. ¿Sí? Bueno. And then we have Joan Groisart. I was told I should not pronounce it in a French way. I think I didn't manage, but from IDAE, the director of IDAE being with us. Maybe Julia, let's start with your perspectives. We heard that there is a lot of happening basically on the city level. What are your thoughts when you hear basically the Renewables Global States Report finding on 2021?
Thank you very much, and thank you for including the perspective of cities in the Global Status Report. I represent C40. For those of you that do not know, C40 is the network of cities, of global cities combating climate change. And as we heard from Mr. Arturos, the role of energy systems, decarbonizing the energy systems and the energy network is crucial if we want to achieve the very important goals of the Paris Agreement. So thank you for including the perspective of cities. For us, working with cities is particularly important. One thing that I would like to highlight that maybe was not covered in the report is that cities, as the layers of government that work closely to the citizens, they can play a key role also in providing the very much needed access to energy. We still have 800 million inhabitants globally that do not have access to energy. So placing cities in the central role of providing energy access and a decarbonized energy for these citizens, for us is crucial. I also very much agree with the Vice President of my country, Spain, that Europe is in a leading and pioneer situation with the very ambitious targets that have been set in this region. And I think that together with the other European countries that are leading on this energy revolution, we have a duty to inspire with a vision to the rest of the world. And cities here again have a key role to play. We have actually mayors that have committed to really high ambitions and targets. Many of them have committed to decarbonize the electricity supply by 2035. This is way before what the European institutions are discussing. These mayors together, just to name some of them here in Europe, we have Copenhagen, London, Paris, and Lisbon, who have publicly committed, are also paving the market to facilitate, to push for this very much needed shift in the market supply and making the case a revolution that is possible. But I know that we are running out of time, and I will end my contribution here until the next question.
Thank you very much, Julia. Especially, I think there are very clear messages about cities can also be a key lever in accelerating actually the transition. I think you spoke about the electricity supply. We also know that cities are very important in driving e-mobility. So, Arturo, you have heard the transport sector is actually one of the sectors that has the lowest share of renewable energy, 3.7%. Next to it, it's the sector that has the most rapid energy demand growth, actually, of plus 4%. Electric mobility is like a bridging stone between the energy sector and transport. What are your thoughts when you heard the findings?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting us. Let me explain shortly what IDAE means, which is the cluster which gathers the industrial, technological, and services value chain of e-mobility. And for us, it's very important because renewables and e-mobility have strong links, because everybody knows electric vehicle is a tool for decarbonizing transport, and this is true. It's zero emissions in the propulsion system, and the batteries are fitted in Spain by 70% of energy free of CO2 emissions. It's true, that including nuclear, but for us it's another debate. But in Spain, 70% of the energy is free of CO2 emissions, and it's important. So it's sustainable mobility. But the electric vehicle is above all energy efficiency, because it's the only propulsion system able to interact with the grid in order to boost renewables, distribute energy, and energy storage. And this is very important, because we're going to a world which demands more services based on electricity. And above all, electric vehicle is a passive actor together with the renewables, because their batteries can be fitted with energy coming from renewables, and this is good. But it's an active actor as well, because an electric vehicle can take energy from the grid, but at certain moments can provide energy to the grid, thanks to the bidirectionality of the recharge. And this is very important, because it's energy taken by renewables that you can provide in other moment, in other place, when, for example, the energy of the mix is being produced by fossil fuels. So it's a very important part of this role, and that's the reason renewables and electric vehicles are very well connected.
And maybe to directly build on this, so there is a lot of potential. What are the challenges actually in better interconnecting, I guess, like the e-mobility sector and the energy sector, the renewable energy parts? What is required so that we can massively accelerate those developments?
Well, I think it's on one hand it's a regulatory issue. So in this way, the government and IDAE are working hard in order to overcome the barriers for mixing the relationship of renewables and the electric vehicle. But we have to bear in mind that apart from a regulatory issue, we need to collaborate with the public administration. So the private sector and public sector must work together in order to boost this mix of renewables and e-mobility. And I have to say that we're working on it, and we have felt that this collaboration has grown these last years, and we must continue in order to achieve these goals, because it's a very ambitious goal that we are facing now, as Ms. Teresa Rivera said before, and we think that e-mobility should be considered a key part of this challenge, and a key tool to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Maybe before coming to John's perspective from the Spanish government side also, or the implementing agency also, Julia, what are for you? I mean, multi-level governance, the role of cities is key. But what are key challenges where you feel like these need to be addressed to really build on the potential and the synergies that do exist? I'm
very glad that we didn't agree on any questions beforehand, because you're asking the right ones. There are many challenges, and I think that our Spanish minister has started listing some of them. She mentioned that we live in a world of interlinked crises. The energy crisis, the cost of living crisis. If some of you here are following the economic news, there is also a deep economic crisis coming in our region, in the European region. The energy crisis is a very important one, a crisis that we can, well, none of the ones that I have mentioned, but specifically the energy crisis, together with the cost of living crisis, is affecting directly the most deprived layers of our society. I think that in the beginning I said that we should feel privileged to live under the umbrella of the European institutions. On May 18th, they published this Repower EU plan that is, if there is something we think that it's a very ambitious plan, if there is something we think that it's providing the much needed hope that we all need as citizens, and if there is something that we should, where the plan is falling short, is precisely on providing relief to these most deprived areas. I'm talking about the increasing rate of energy poverty in our region. And here again, the role of cities is crucial. And we know we've been working with a few of our member cities who are already acting since many years to provide these very much needed relief measures. Just to name some of them. Here in Spain, the city of Barcelona has created a network of energy poverty advisors. This is city officials, but actually staff that people that suffer from energy poverty can go to analyze what are their options. Cities like Barcelona, but also London, are promoting municipally operated energy agencies that also can channel at an affordable rate renewable energies to the families in need and families suffering from energy poverty. So if there is one gap in the Repower EU plan where we can work together with the national government, is precisely this social aspect. And we have an opportunity. 2 years ago, the European institutions launched the Green and Just Recovery and the Next Generation EU plan and funds. And if there was one criticism from the actors like myself that work with local entities, was that national governments did not consult sufficiently the cities and the local entities to provide these recovery and resilience plans that were sent to Brussels, to the European Commission. This has been corrected. The Repower EU plan that will need to be translated into direct funds through the Fit for 55 package is signaling directly at the crucial role of cities to implement these very much needed measures included in the plan. And it's a pity that Minister Rivera is not here, because one of the things that I truly believe where we can all work together is, and the opportunity is now, not tomorrow, to work on how to fill in this gap in the next phase of these resilience and recovery plans that will need to go to Brussels. But maybe Joan can help us reply to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. Yes, this was exactly what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure that, Joan, you can maybe give this perspective, but also channel this back to the minister. So what are your thoughts? I mean, I think it's, when I compare it to some global discussions, what is really interesting is from both speakers here, we hear actually very encouraging perspectives on collaboration, that we are able to make the transition happen. So that's something which is very particular. So what is like the success ingredients, what is happening in Spain, that it is possible, and that you even see how you can push together even more.
So thank you very much, Rana, and thank you to REN21 for the opportunity of launching together this global status report and next year's SPIREC, which will be an amazing opportunity, I'm sure. I think you mentioned it earlier, Rana, and REN21 is all about multi-stakeholder dialogue, and I think that's exactly what it's about. And we've been working together with different agents. The energy transition, if we really believe we're going to have a democratized, decentralized, digitalized and decarbonized energy system, no single agent can do it alone. Obviously, incumbents, the traditional utilities cannot do it alone, there's no way. Public administration cannot do it alone, private sector cannot do it alone, no single agent can do it. And it's all about collaborating, figuring out, obviously having the right regulatory framework which enables that innovation. And when I'm talking about innovation, I mean technological, but especially, I think, social innovation. The technology today, I mean, renewable energy is already the cheapest way of generating electricity and often the cheapest way of generating heat and mobility as well. So we also need to accelerate, obviously, electrifying and decarbonizing other end uses. So the technology is there. The appetite for financing is there, public but also private. from the small scale, small entrepreneur to the huge international investment banks and obviously multilateral banks, are all, the money is there, the appetite is there. And I think that the key is decision making at the end. We have the tools, we have the technology. There's obviously technology to continue to develop, but it's there. The financing needs are there. It's how do we actually make those decisions? And I think Minister Rivera mentioned it at the start. It's about having informed users. It's no longer about a single company's board or a single council of ministers deciding to make the transition. It's about every small business person, every local municipality, from the big to the little towns. It's every single block of flats, the neighbors living there deciding together, are we going to refurbish this building? How do we deal with the neighbor from number 3 which isn't able to pay up those fees because they are maybe in a vulnerable situation? Or how do we develop rooftop solar? So I think part of the success story, or the hopefully in construction success story, is about making those decisions. We are currently in a cost of living crisis, in a geopolitical crisis in Europe, with war at the borders of the European Union, which we thought we wouldn't see in a long time. Unfortunately, we are seeing it. And that is an absolute crisis from a humanitarian and social perspective. But it's allowing us to realize, or at least the debate in Spain, and that's been very, very interesting to see, there's been a very clear shift. Lots of us, I know in this room, have been saying for years, renewables are the way forward in terms of accessibility to energy, in terms of reducing our country's dependence. But now it's a social debate. And interestingly, the deployment, for example, of self-consumption of rooftop solar has gone through the roof in Spain, because people are realizing that's the cheapest and the most responsible way of going forward. A lot of that is down to municipalities actually in Spain doing those links, and Barcelona, for example, Balearic Islands, different areas in Spain are doing the link between how do we get vulnerable people, ensuring they are included in the transition, basically making sure everyone is on the table, making those decisions together. So I think those are the main ingredients, and my main message would be it's about decision making, it's about having the right people in the room at the table, and having the right information to make those decisions. So that would be the summary.
Thank you. I'll just build on this because I think this sounds very convincing. The reality is we see that there are many governments today who have a short-term response and also long-term response, to be honest, to the current crisis, whether it's energy security or the economic crisis, by investing in more fossil fuel, diversifying from fossil fuel. What is your message to those governments and decision makers? How do you convince them? Because it's also about developing the right narratives, right?
So, and it's a very current debate because of the spike in energy prices and so on. And again, Minister Rivera has a line which I've borrowed or stolen, which is the short, the mid, and the long term. They all start on the same day, which is today. So whichever decision you make today, you need to think about, are you being coherent in all of those terms, because they end in different places, but they all start in the same place. There's an issue there with credibility as well, and I think that something that Spain has been very vocal about in the European arena is market design. Spain, as Arturo was saying earlier, 70% of Spain's generation is fossil fuel free. More than 50% of Spanish electricity generation is renewable with very low operating costs. However, the market design, which was designed in an era of dominating fossil fuel generation, is designed in such a way that the consumer does not receive the incremental benefits of that renewable energy development. So there's a visual impact or consequences or reality to do with renewables. There's development going on. And the immediate impact to do with jobs is there, but the immediate impact to do with energy prices is not there, is not so visible. And we need to make sure we are able to convey those advantages, those benefits to society. For example, rooftop solar self-consumption is a way of that happening. So again, we need to make sure that the short, the mid, and the long-term goals are coherent. New investments in fossil fuels, we need to have a reality check and a sanity check, almost a viability check. How long do we need to make those investments viable, and are we going to have to discontinue them before there's reasonable returns? And how do we accelerate electrification of heating with heat pumps, for example, electrification of transport, so we can deal with, we can avoid the sort of short-term aspect and get to the final solution. It's very difficult to I guess the energy debate is very vocal because it affects what people pay at the end of the month or what people pay when they go to refuel their vehicle. So it's making sure that the that solution is very visible, is very credible in the short term, so we can avoid shortcuts, which are not really shortcuts. They are, they will end up, they will make it longer until we actually get there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I'll build on the, so we're almost ramping up here, but build on the informed decision makers. A question for you, Arturo, which was not a pre-planned question, but I need to ask this question. We globally still see that the mobility ecosystem and the energy ecosystem are, partly speaking, in parallel worlds. Now, we're here where GENERA and the Global Mobility Call are happening at the same time. The Spanish International Renewable Energy Conference is coming up. What do we need to do during the next couple of months, and what should be the outcome that we can really send a strong message that those sectors is about collaboration and opportunities while we collaborate?
Yeah, well, we're in an environmental place where all the professionals are eager to do that, because, okay, all of us are interested in boosting this market, so and boosting renewables, e-mobility, and so on. But we have to consider that we are part of a society, and I think, as usual, environmental issues are under the consumer's pocket, for example, you know? And you have to bear in mind, because also e-mobility moves people from the comfort zone, because they have to rethink their mobility. This is something very important, because it's not only a change in the ecological transition to thinking on renewable energies and so on. Is a change which is huge. It entails other issues in general, and for the citizens, it's something that will change the way of living and so on. And we need to not combine, but we need that the society understand the need of making this change, because in a professional way in this environment, okay, we are sure that this must be done. But apart from IFEMA, we need to convince the rest of the population about all these changes, and this is the most important and difficult thing, because it needs a lot of information. It needs, to explain properly what are we doing and why this is necessary. So I think this is the most important challenge, apart from regulatory issues, the collaboration with public and private sectors and so on. We need to convince citizens on the need of going there.
Thank you. I'm really amazed about hearing so often citizens, social, societal aspects, because I think ultimately this is where we need to drive change. It's not only about technology, innovation, business models. So you have the last word, Julia. What can cities do to convince city makers, citizens more? Because the reality is we have many countries, many regions where we still have a not in my backyard effect, where there's not informed decision makers. The crisis creates an opportunity, but what are, let's say, like the 2-3 key actions to take urgently, so that in 6 months' time we can say there's another awareness, about opportunities?
Well, thank you for giving me the last word. Such a responsibility. The minister was mentioning the 4 Ds. I want to mention the 3 Rs: retrofit, renewables, and relief, the social aspect. And actually, if you allow me 10 seconds for a small propaganda moment, I would like to invite everyone to visit our C40 website, because the C40 mayors that represent 96 megacities globally, but particularly in Europe, a total of 16 mayors have launched an emergency plan to combat the energy crisis, with a 10-point plan that has been also backed by the International Energy Agency.
Thank you very much. This was a very short, but I think important information to visit the C4T website. I would like to thank all 3 of you very much. Lots of thanks to people here in the audience and also online. And basically, I invite you to follow and participate in the discussion during the next couple of months, and join us on 21st to 23rd February 2023 2023, sorry, in Madrid here for the Spanish International Renewable Energy Conference. Thanks a lot for your attention and your participation.